Hey, welcome everybody. Looks like, let's see here. Where are we at? Okay, got a few people here. Welcome. Hope everybody's doing okay. Alright, give me just a minute. I had planned to start at 8 o'clock, and then turns out I had a lot of stuff not ready yet to do this stream, so bear with me for just a second. Oh, let's see here. Okay, just about got everything ready. Okay, that's good enough. Alright, so, welcome. Today, we are we're not really going to be doing any work today. We're just going to kind of be discussing some things that I've had going on in terms of new projects and things to expect going forward, and things to look out for from me. So to kick this thing off, first of all, those of you who joined me for the Wii HDMI streams that I did a few days ago, or what, a week ago, I don't remember. Those of you who joined me for that and saw those installations happen, just so you know, there is now a batch of actually like final production flex cables and PCBs being made right now for the Wii HDMI mod. So that mod will be available like relatively soon. This should be, I mean, it's hard to say right now with the way that supply chain issues are going. It's kind of hard to predict anything at this point, but I'm hoping in a few weeks to have everything together to be able to start offering the Wii HDMIs for sale, and that's pretty exciting. That is tentative based on how the flex cables actually perform, because I've never used this particular manufacturer for flex cables before. So the quality of the product is going to have a major factor. Is going to be a major factor on whether or not the Wii HDMI mod releases in a timely fashion. But here's to hoping that will work out. Okay, let's see here. So, first of all, what I wanted to show today, I got several different things I wanted to show. Some of them are new projects that are being worked on, and some of them are projects that are already released, but I've never done YouTube, any kind of YouTube videos about. So, first of all, let's go through some stuff that's been released that I've never talked about on YouTube. I imagine that probably most of the people who come to this YouTube channel are looking for retro video game related stuff, N64. That seems to be where I get most of my traffic from for as far as analytics are concerned. So seems like most people are coming here looking for N64 content, and that's cool because I do a lot of N64 RGB installations. I probably at this point am the most I'm probably one of the most prolific N64 RGB installers at this point, because I have installed a lot of them. But I do also... Oh, hey, 80s Rule. Welcome back. Yeah, I do also... let's see. I've got the chat embedded. This is something I'm trying out. Embedded chat in the video because YouTube has this thing where if you trim the video down, then you lose live chat replay. So I figured we'd give that a try. Because I probably will trim the beginning of this video off where it was just playing music. But yeah, so anyway, it seems like most people come here for N64 stuff, but I do also do arcade stuff as well. So one of the things that I have had available for a little while now is my Vuelix console I/O. And what this is basically an I/O board that slots in place in a Vuelix arcade cabinet that lets you plug in like the Brook fighting boards that you would normally use in like an arcade stick. And it has a few different features on it that are pretty cool. So you can slot player 1 and player 2 Brook fighting boards in place. Or if you have one of my MC Cthulhu upgrade boards, then you could also use one of those here. Let me see if I can grab a Brook board. Okay, so here's a Brook Universal Fighting Board. So the Brook boards have this 20-pin header on them, and basically you can just slot them in place on the console I/O, and then slap this into your Vuelix and plug this this 60-pin cable in, and you've got a direct connection that you can plug into your PS4 or your PC or whatever you're trying to connect up to your Vuelix. So for people who have Vuelixes, I don't know how to say that. This is a really easy way to get things hooked up without having to hack up your wiring harnesses or anything like that. They're available on my website right now. I think I'm actually down to this may be one of the last couple that I have in stock right now, but there will be more replenished. I just have to get more components because I have plenty of the PCBs. I just don't always have all of the connectors and whatnot. Yeah, so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Now another thing we've looked at before on here on the YouTube channel is my... Where did it go? Uh-oh. Let's see here. How did I lose track of that? Okay. Well, that's kind of stupid. Oh, there it is. So, I've shown this before. Well, an older version of this, but this is my Sega Saturn to DB15 controller adapter. Continuing on the arcade trend. This right here is the current version of it. It takes a Sega Saturn controller and lets you hook the Saturn controller to a Super Gun or a Neo Geo that uses the DB15. Neo Geo AES or some of the MVS boards also have the DB15 port on them. But this lets you adapt to for example, the Haas Super Gun or the Minigun Super Gun. Take this standard DB15 connection, and this will let you plug a Sega Saturn controller into it, There's been a few updates since the original video that I made of this. All the same features hold. It has button remapping. It has auto fire, like different settings for like turbo essentially, that you can independently program on all the buttons. But it also has a few other features added onto it as well that didn't exist on the previous one. First of all, the most obvious thing is that there's the option to do a 3D printed case for it instead of having it as an exposed PCB, which is pretty cool. And I think it turned out really nicely. I'm using a technique of printing several different colored filaments on top of each other, like layering multiple prints together. And that's how I'm getting this effect, because I don't have a multi-color printer. I just have a single color printer, and I will load up one filament and print out just a single layer thick logo, and this circle right here is an LED light pipe, which an LED down on the circuit board shines up through there, and that's like a indicator to let you know whenever you're in the programming modes and everything. I'm going to do probably a more thorough video on all of my adapters here soon. That'll probably be like an edited video showing how they work and how to do everything on them. And by them, I mean I actually have two other adapters that are not... This one's available. The Saturn adapter is available for sale right now. You can pick it up on my store. These other two are not available yet because I'm still working on a few things with them. I'm trying to figure out whether 3D printing a housing is even worthwhile for these, because the nice thing about the Saturn is that the controller port is relatively small, so 3D printing a housing that didn't end up making the overall size of the adapter much larger was really easy. But with the Super Nintendo, and especially the PlayStation controller port, the controller port is so wide that if I 3D print a housing that goes around the controller port, then the entire adapter is going to be enormous, and I feel like that would probably be a problem for a lot of people. So, excuse me, that's probably not going to happen, but we'll see. We'll see. I've been trying to figure out how to do it in a way that would make sense. But these right here, you got a Super Nintendo to DB15 adapter. It has all the same features as the Saturn one. It can do button remapping. It can do the rapid fire turbo modes and everything. Just like the Saturn adapter can. But it works for the Super Nintendo, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, same thing for the PlayStation. So this one is a PlayStation adapter. You can plug in any PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 controllers and be able to use those. Now, the reason that the PlayStation adapter is not available yet is because it's the code, the code on the chip here still needs some work. Because I've had reports of issues getting third-party controllers working properly with this adapter with its current code. So I have to go back to the drawing board a little bit on that and figure out where the problem is with this. But hopefully that's sorted out pretty soon. Can't make any promises. This is not like my top priority currently, but it's on the list, the to-do list. The Super Nintendo adapters will probably be available very soon because there's really nothing that needs to be done on those. But the PlayStation adapter is probably a little further off. But it's really cool. It has all the same features, and it's pretty slick to be able to adapt all of these different controllers to a super gun. 80s rule, you say, would need to have a cable dongle. What do you mean by that exactly? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Well, in the meantime, I have in January I did console Jam Iser pre-orders, which I had some delays getting some of the components for those pre-orders, so those have been running really far behind. Oh, 80s rule. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you'd want to do a cable, like a dongle, to get the adapters away from the ports of the Super Gun. If you had the 3D printed covers on them. I see what you're saying there. See, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have it set up in a way that it's difficult for people to use them, and where they have to do dongles and stuff like that. These are small enough in their current form that they can sit next to each other, plugged into like most typical Super Guns with the spacing, the controller port spacing the way that they are. So what I'm thinking is, if I do a 3D printed cover for these, it's probably just going to be like a little, just like a small shell that goes over just the exposed PCB area and doesn't fully enclose the controller port. That's probably the only way that that's going to happen with these adapters. So we'll see. I'll be looking into it. 3D printing, it's a big thing, big complicated process, but hopefully I can come up with something that makes sense. On the topic of the console Jam Isers, they're all of the pre-orders from January. The actual console Jam Iser boards are done. I have a stack of them in the other room. So if you happen to be watching and you're one of the people who ordered a console Jam Iser, they're done now. I've gotten all the parts and I've assembled all of them. The only thing that I don't have done yet, to where that I'm shipping those orders, is I'm still assembling the VGA hats. I've got a few of those to put together, and once those are done, then the whole thing goes out. All the orders go out. So that'll probably be by the end of the week. Everything should be shipped, assuming that everything goes smoothly. And hopefully there's not too bad shipping delays or anything like that. I think that pretty much covers all the arcade-related stuff that I want to... Oh, actually, there's one more arcade-related thing I want to show. Let's see if I have it in here. Okay, I do have one in here. So, we were looking at Brook boards earlier. This is a project that I'm working with. You may have seen, if you ever go to Jason's Customs, his YouTube channel, he did a live stream a couple weeks ago now of a earlier version of this. This is a product that I'm developing for Jason. It's going to be sold on his site specifically. I won't be offering this for sale on my site. This is a product designed for his site. He's going to be the exclusive distributor of it. But this is called the RMAF. And what it is, this little board is designed to plug into a Brook board, which, here we go. So, you got your Brook fighting board that you would normally have inside of your arcade stick. And this is really intended for arcade sticks specifically. But you got your Brook fighting board that you'd have normally in your arcade stick. And then you take this RMAF board, which has a female header on the bottom of it. See if I can zoom in a little bit better here. So female header on the bottom of it, you plug that into the 20-pin header of the Brook board. And then once you've plugged that in, now you have, let's see if you can see this. So now you have a second 20-pin header up here, and you also have screw terminals here for P1 through 4 and K1 through 4 for the punches and kicks. And what this board does is this basically intercepts the button presses from your arcade stick and then allows you to do full button remapping and rapid fire. Basically the same feature set that's in my little controller adapters, but you can actually install this into an arcade stick with a Brook fighting board, and you'll be able to do button remapping and rapid fire capabilities and everything all on any console that you hook this up to with your fighting board, which is pretty cool. You could plug this into an arcade stick and then basically have universal remapping capability across whatever console you're plugging it into. If you use a retro board and you're plugging this into a Super Nintendo or a Sega Saturn or something like that, you can still have the same button remapping capability. And the cool thing about this is that not only does it do the button remapping and the auto fire custom maps, it also has the ability to save up to 8 profiles. So you can have a different profile of a different button map for each game that you play often. And then whenever you need to load one of the profiles that you have, you just press a specific button combination and you can load an existing profile, and you can save an existing profile and edit profiles all you want. And you can switch between 8 different pre-existing preset profiles, which is really nice, especially if you play a variety of different games for different consoles. And you have one arcade stick that you do all that with. You can do a custom map for Neo Geo games, and you can do a custom map for like standard 6-button fighting games, and you can do a special map for like certain shmups that you maybe play or something like that. And it can all be done, you know, simultaneously, which is pretty cool. This is a almost final production version of what we're going to be selling at Jason's store, but it's pretty close to being there, and I'm very excited about this. This is going to be really cool. I think that pretty much does it for arcade stuff. So the next thing I want to show, I've got a lot of projects kind of coming together right now, as you might be able to tell. The next thing I want to show is a project I've been working on for a while, which is, I've been working on different variations of this for a while, actually, but this is the most recent variation, and there's already another variation that exists that's newer than this, more advanced than this, but it's currently being manufactured. So I'm going to show this one that gives you a general idea of what this does, and then later on, when we get the newest prototypes, I'll show what that does. So this right here, you may have seen my previous video about the CX4 adapters that I made that let you install, you know, multiple ROMs and make multi-carts out of a CX4 cartridge. So you can do a Mega Man X2 and Mega Man X3 multi-cart, for example, using, I think the previous video I did was on my 27C322 version, which lets you use 16-bit 27C322 EEPROMs, or no, just EEPROMs, which is pretty cool, pretty nice, but that one lets you do just Mega Man X2 and X3. This one right here is an evolution of that concept, but instead of using the 27C322, I've switched back to more common flash memory. This is for a couple of reasons. For one, it's easier to more programmers support this stuff. You can program that on like a cheap, like a Mini Pro TL866, which I know a lot of people have. With the appropriate adapter, you can program this flash memory using one of these Mini Pros, and you don't need to get like a GQ4X or anything like that. That's like a more expensive programmer to be able to program these. But the other thing that this board can do, and that the newer version can do even better, is it can do more than just 2 games. On the old version that I had with the 27C322, the maximum you could do is 2 games. So you could do X2 and X3, which would be the typical configuration. With this one, and especially the next version of this, which is going to support up to 3 separate flash chips, you can do 3 to, with that version technically you'll be able to do 6 games. The typical configuration is going to be a combination of 3 29F016 chips, like this big one here, which would allow you to put 3 games on it. So if you had 3 29F016s, you could put Mega Man X2, X3, and the other cool thing that you can do with this is Mega Man X1. So this now supports Mega Man X1, 2, and 3 all in the same cartridge. And there is a little microcontroller here, an ATtiny 402, that actually has code running on it that handles the switching between the different ROMs. So there's no wiring switches up or cutting anything on your cartridge. It's a completely no cut kind of mod. Now this version requires the removal of the existing mask ROMs, but the new version that's being manufactured right now, and I'll be testing soon, it actually is designed like the old 27C322 adapter, where it lays over top of the existing mask ROMs and doesn't require you to remove them. So this will be a completely reversible mod. The old mask ROMs won't need to be removed, and the new mod will just slide right on top of this. But I want to demonstrate how this works. So I've got a Super Nintendo right here. Okay. So we got our Super Nintendo right here. I'm going to take my CX4. This is a Mega Man X2 cartridge, by the way. So it's a Mega Man X2 cartridge. That's what this new version of the mod is going to be compatible with. I'm looking into making it compatible with the X3 cartridge, but it's going to need to be a separate board design because the X3 cartridge uses a totally different pinout for the mask ROM chip. But, okay, let me switch over to Game Capture. Okay, so we fire up the Super Nintendo. And we make sure that our OSSC is actually plugged in. That would probably help. Okay, there we go. So the Super Nintendo's fired up and it's on Mega Man X1. Now, Mega Man X1, to get it to run on a CX4 chip, you actually need to patch it. Because for some reason, the CX4 chip triggers Mega Man X's copy protection. And if you know anything about Mega Man X's copy protection, it's pretty wild. Some weird stuff happens with Mega Man X if it detects that it's on a fake cartridge. You get things where like you lose your power-ups whenever you complete levels. You can't get the Hadouken. That's not it lets you get the Hadouken, but then it resets your game and clears all of your progress. It's a pain in the ass. But if you do the patch, if you install the patch on the game that removes the copy protection, then you can load this. You can load X1 onto a CX4 cartridge, and it works just fine. So that's X1. So here's how we switch to X2. It's really simple. So you're going to take and you're going to hold down the reset for 3 seconds. Once you've done that, see it switches to Capcom 1994 and Mega Man X2. So X2, and the cool thing about this is that unlike the old version of this mod where it just used a logic gate to select which game you're on, this one, since it uses a little microcontroller to control the banks of the ROMs, it actually saves in its own internal memory which game you were on last time. So if I turn off the console and then turn it back on, it remembers that it was on Mega Man X2, which is pretty cool, I think. And then if we want to switch from Mega Man X2 to Mega Man X3, again, we just hold the reset button for about 3 seconds. Let go of it. And now we're on Mega Man X3. And the way that this would be configured with the new version of the mod that I haven't received yet, that's being manufactured, if you set it up with, instead of using 3 29F016 flash chips, if you use 29F032 flash chips, they have twice as much memory. you can actually put up to 6 different games that you could switch between, which would be pretty insane. And the microcontroller needs to just be programmed for however many you're going to switch between. You just need to tell the microcontroller how many it's going to be in the code, and then it can switch. It can just cycle through all the options as needed. So I know this is kind of a niche product because most people, with my old adapter, I think I only ever had people inquire about them, like, maybe like 5 people ever actually inquired about them. But, the people that are interested in something like this, I'm just trying to build a better product because this is something that's really always been interesting to me, the idea of getting these multi-carts that are more and more advanced up and running. One thing that you have to do on the CX4, on the Mega Man X2 version of the CX4, is that you have to, in order for Mega Man X to work on this cartridge, you have to get A20 wired up to, because the oh, 80s rule. Okay, so hey, you bring up a good point. So the Mega Man X3 cart, this version that I'm talking about right now, the one that's being developed right now and will be available soon, works on a Mega Man X2 cartridge actually, but it does have to be an X2 cartridge, and the future version that will be X3 compatible does have to be an X3 cartridge, but they don't have to be a Mega Man X2 or X3 cartridge. They can be a Rockman X2 or X3 cartridge. And Mega Man X3 and X2 cartridges are, $150 loose. But Rockman X2 or X3 cartridges, importing them from Japan, $20, $15, $20 for a Rockman X1 or X2 or X3 cartridge. So that's what I use. All of my modding has been done on Rockman cartridges, not Mega Man cartridges, because I don't have that kind of budget for this. But you can put the English ROMs of Mega Man X1, 2, and 3 on this cart, and it'll work just fine, even if it's a Japanese cart originally. So that's the way to go if you want this. And you can put the Japanese ROMs on there. I think like speedrunners use the Japanese ROMs. Although you probably wouldn't be able to speedrun. It'd probably be against the rules to speedrun with a cart that's modified like this, but I don't know. What do I know? So anyway, this is you have to get A20 because on the standard the CX4 cartridge for X2 does not have the A20 address line wired to either of the chips because it uses 2 ROM chips instead of 1, and it has a chip select line that it drives high or low depending on which chip it's selecting instead of A20. And Mega Man X expects A20 to be one of the address lines. So you have to actually solder an address line for A20, and you can solder it here. This is how I've got it set up on this cartridge. You can solder it here if you want to be fancy. It goes to this pin. What is that? I don't know what pin it is. I'll do a documentation on this that tells you this stuff, but you can solder it directly to the CX4, or since X1 doesn't actually use any of the functions of the CX4, you can bypass the CX4 entirely, and you can actually solder it down here to, you can just scrape off some of the solder mask here and solder it right to the top of whichever finger it is. I can't remember which one it is. Like I said, whenever I do release it, I'm going to release documentation for all this stuff, but you whichever pin is A20 down here, you would just scrape off the solder mask right at the top and then solder your wire to that. That would be a lot easier to do, but it does require you to trim a little bit of the plastic out of the cartridge as well. Just right where the 2 halves of the cartridge come together, you need to trim out a little bit of plastic to allow that solder that you're going to be adding there to have room to be there. But that's totally fine if you want to do it that way because it's easier. The other thing you have to wire up is a reset line. So the way that the selection works for the cartridge is when you hold the reset line, when you push the reset button, it drives the reset line low that goes to the cartridge. So all you have to do is put a wire from reset right here down to this point right here is one of the reset points. This is also a reset point. And then on the back side of the board, somewhere around here, you can see, oh, I don't remember where it's at. Anyway, the point is that on the back side of the board, you can access reset as well. Let's see. It's got to be this point right here. Again, documentation will be made. But yeah, so that's what you can do here. With the new version, if you did do a triple 29F032 setup, like a madman, you could put 6 games on there. I haven't tested high ROM and low ROM on the CX4, so I'm not sure what I know you can put low ROM games on it. You can put any low ROM game on there. The only reason X required anything special to be done as far as a patch is because of the copy protection in there, but you could put, honestly, any low ROM Super Nintendo game that doesn't have any special functions to it on there. I don't know what Mega Man Soccer is, but if you wanted to put Mega Man Soccer on there, if it's a low ROM game, you probably could. You probably can't put Mega Man 8 on there without further modification, because that is a high ROM game. So that's a little bit different. But, you know, you can do X1, X2, X3, maybe Mega Man Soccer if that's your style. You definitely can't do Mega Man and Bass, because that game requires that you have SRAM on your cartridge as well. And my mod does not cover adding SRAM at this time. And I've looked into it. I don't think it's something I'm ever going to try to tackle. But yeah, that's the CX4 cartridge. That's the newest version of what I've been working on with the CX4 cartridge. And I'll do a proper video whenever I get my prototypes in for the new design. And we'll go from there. When I do offer it on my store, I will be offering the ability to program the microcontroller for you. You tell me what you want. Like, you tell me how many games you're going to put on there, what your configuration is going to be, and then I program the microcontroller for you before I ship it out. That way it's ready to go. So you just program your chips, you just program your flash chips, and then you solder them on, and then you solder it onto your cartridge, and then you're good to go. Or you could send your cartridge in to me, and I could do everything for you. You just need to provide me the whatever ROM file that you want me to program onto the chips. You'd have to provide that to me, and I could take care of it from there. Yeah, that pretty much covers that. Any questions? No? Alright, cool. So the next thing is going to be N64, what everybody comes here for. So this right here is an N64 Advanced. And I think I said several times to several different people that I have no intention of ever offering N64 Advanced boards to people through my store, but I've kind of changed my tune on that. So this is a I guess you could say a prototype. Not really, but I sent this off for manufacturing and there was a problem with the board file. So this round of production that I got done here does not work. But replacements are being made right now. There's a mix-up with one of the power rails. I was using a PCB file that was on the GitHub, but it was an out-of-date PCB file. I don't know how that happened. So I sent them off to be manufactured, and they didn't work. So I've got new ones on the way, and hopefully I'll be adding these soon. But I'm going to treat the N64 Advanced as a limited supply type item. So this is what it comes down to. They're very expensive. The N64 Advanced is very expensive to stock because you got, first of all, you got an FPGA, which is about $10. Then you've got a DAC chip that's about $10. And then you've got, you know, low dropout regulators. You got all kinds of signal processing. You've got just a ton of specialized components on here that are more expensive than usual. So, you know, over here, you know, you get a stack of these N64 RGB V1 boards, and it's, you know, it's no big deal. I can stock these all day because the individual component cost is so much lower for everything on here. But whenever you scale up to something like the N64 Advanced, it's just kind of prohibitive how expensive it is to stock these. So what I'm going to do is stock them in limited quantities. They're basically going to be a special order item. So I'll try to keep like maybe 5 of these on hand at any given time, but no more than that. And if you order one whenever I don't have them in stock, I'll let you order it, but you're going to have to be aware that there will be an increased lead time. You know, it may take a week, 2 weeks to get it delivered, or for me to actually ship it, because I might have to order, you know, a whole set of parts and wait for them to arrive before I can even assemble them from your order. So that's how we're going to handle it. We'll see how that goes. I may be able to bring a few more items in kind of like a limited order status that I previously thought were too expensive to be stocked on the store. But with the N64 Advanced, I did do my thing where the new version of this board is going to be modified a little bit. I don't like the way that the ribbon cables, I don't like the way the pads are set up on the N64 Advanced. If you look here, all of the pads for like red, green, blue, sync, 5 volts, all the stuff going back to the AV multi-out, they're like spaced out just awkwardly, different spacings for all the pads, which means you have to strip back wires and solder one and then another and then another. And I like all of my wires to be like the digital input wires are, where they're all spaced out evenly and they're all 1.27 millimeters apart, so that it's a perfect alignment. You just strip back some ribbon cable and then you solder them straight on there, and you're not stripping wires apart. You know, you're not doing all this. You're not doing all this. You know, that's really annoying to me. So in my modified file, which is being manufactured right now, I've consolidated all of these stragglers into a really tight alignment where you don't have to do all this stuff. And I've reorganized where the pads are to make them line up with the AV filter board much better, because the way that they are laid out currently, they don't even line up. They're not even the same order on the filter board as they are on the main board. So you're switching wires around, and it's just a mess in my opinion. So that's a change. But the other cool thing that I've been working on is I've always hated the way that the N64 Advanced mounts to the heatsink, because the way that Bordy tells you to mount it is he tells you to take a screw and like a stack of washers and like layer them up on each other to space it off of the board. And I've always felt like that's just like such a like hacky solution. It's not really an elegant solution at all. So what I did is I designed a little 3D printed bracket. I want to show that. So whenever I sell these, you're going to receive the N64 Advanced Board, and you're also going to receive this bracket. And the way this bracket works is it's a 2-piece deal. So there's this piece down here. So you have the main frame of the bracket, and you have this little piece here, which is where the screw actually attaches to. So what you do to install this is you take this and you pop it up inside, up underneath, and through this hole in the N64 heatsink. So once you pop that through the hole, then you just make sure that you press it up from the other side, and then you take your little frame and you snap the frame right in place. Once you've snapped the frame in place, then everything's held together. And then you take your N64 Advanced board and you just set it on top of that. And then you pop your screw. There's a screw that you're not going to be putting in now that goes underneath this heatsink. This screw hole right here. you're not going to be adding that screw anyway because the N64 Advanced Board covers it up. So you take that same screw that you just removed and you just lay your N64 Advanced Board right there. Take that screw. And you just drive it in. And that's it. Now your N64 Advance is mounted. And you have a really, hopefully you can, maybe it can focus on this. No? Probably not. Well, anyway, that's the back side of the adapter. And it's not going to focus on it, is it? Come on. Try. Yeah, anyway, you can see. So you got the back side of the adapter, and the screw is going in there and just pulling everything together to keep it nice and tight. And that way you don't have a silly stack of washers and everything. Another thing I'm not doing on these N64 Advanced boards is there will not be... So you've got these... Typically you've got these pads on the bottom that have these little contact pads, these little like spring-loaded contact pads. They're just little gold fingers, and they poke down and they are supposed to touch this heatsink and provide extra ground. But here's the thing about the heatsink. If we take a multimeter and do a little test here. So I've got a multimeter. And it's ready to do some continuity tests. Okay. So let's say I take this screw right here. This is a ground point. So this would be ground for anywhere on the case. Right? Totally fine ground point. Now let's check that against the aluminum heatsink. Notice how it's not making any connection? That's because even though the aluminum heatsink is directly screwed to this ground point, the aluminum oxide layer on top of the heatsink is preventing any kind of electrical transmission. Can you get a ground connection from here? Yeah, if you really jam it in there and punch through that oxide layer. But otherwise, the light pressure that those little gold fingers are going to be putting down here, that's not going to be providing any ground connection at all, which means that that part of the mod is completely useless. So I won't be installing those little gold fingers on there. That is not useful at all. No offense to Boardy, it was a good idea. It would have been great had this heatsink piece here where this mounts to not been made out of aluminum, but since it's made out of aluminum, it's just not conductive. It does not conduct. The outer oxide layer prevents it from conducting with any kind of normal contact pressure, so it's just not practical. But yeah, so just be looking forward to that. Hopefully N64 Advanced will be in limited stock with my mounting bracket and everything included. You know, also within the next couple of weeks. It seems like most of the projects that I've got that are pending, like manufacturing, should all be arriving around the same time, assuming that nothing crazy happens with global shipping and whatnot, which I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. Let's see. Do I have anything else interesting to show? Oh, yes, I do. I have one more interesting thing I want to show before we call it a night. So this right here is a Super Nintendo Mini. Pretty typical, right? But it's not, actually. This is a Super Nintendo Mini that has some new stuff going on with it. So this is a test unit that I've been testing a new firmware for the de-jitter mod. So this is my standard Super Nintendo RGB bypass and de-jitter mod combined together. Nothing too special here, except for It's running a new firmware that Mark's just gave to me a couple weeks ago, and I've been testing it. The new firmware, you can see this wire running over here to pin 11 of the CPLD. The new firmware adds the full color subcarrier signal to the pin 11 of the CPLD. So now, whenever you do the LLCS mod where you're doing dejittered composite video and dejittered luminance, so that you can use like HD retrovision cables and still have dejittered sync output, or you can use like sync on Luma cables and still get dejittered output. So with this new firmware, you can now hook up so on the encoder here, what you would normally do is you would lift up the pin for C-Sync input, and then you would put in the LLCS signal from the dejitter mod. Well, now what you're going to do is you're going to lift the C-Sync pin, and you're also going to lift this other pin right here, which is pin 7, I think, or something. I don't know. Again, I'll have documentation. You're going to lift this other pin here, which is the color subcarrier from the one chip, and you're going to feed color subcarrier from the dejitter mod straight into that pin, and that's going to provide, what that does is that lets you keep fully dejittered composite video and Luma, but it eliminates the problem that some people experience on certain Super Nintendo Minis and one-chip Super Nintendos, where the composite video and S-video output develops this problem where you get this flickering black line on the top of the image. That doesn't happen to every Super Nintendo, and I'm not sure why. But what I do know is that with this change and outputting the subcarrier, like a dejittered color subcarrier and dejittered C-Sync to the encoder, you get a stable image with no flicker. So that's really useful for people who still want to have S-video and composite video capability that's not, damaged in any way, but also have the dejittered output of composite video and luminance. And as part of this, so since this new firmware has been released, what I've done is I've designed a new version of the RGB bypass and dejitter board that now is going to have not only the S-video and LLCS connections here, there's also going to be another pad next to it right here that has the color subcarrier on it. So once I receive those, all new versions will be flashed. All new N64, no, not N64, all new Super Nintendo RGB bypass plus dejitter boards will be flashed with the new firmware, and they will be the new model that has the subcarrier pin as well. So instead of wiring it over here to the directly to the pin of the CPLD, you'll actually just run a wire from the subcarrier pin, just like you do on the LLCS pin, and bring that over here and just wire everything up like you normally would, plus the extra subcarrier pin. I'll do a full video on that whenever those arrive, but it's really an exciting change because that's one of the big problems that several people had with the original design and with the original firmware, because a lot of people want to use HD retrovision cables, and if you want dejitter and HD retrovision cables, the only option for you is to either do this where you run the dejittered C-Sync into the encoder, or you could cut the video line. You could cut the actual line going to the composite video signal on the multi-out, and you could run C-Sync directly to that. But if you did that, you'd get dejittered sync on that pin, but you would completely lose composite video, which is, in my opinion, even worse. So I'm excited about this because that solves that problem and makes it easy for anybody who's going to be doing one of these installs, including myself, to be able to get that part of it working correctly. So yeah, this one's a normal dejitter mod, but the new ones are going to be incorporating this feature natively, which is pretty exciting. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about today. I just figured I've had a lot of things in the kind of in the oven, a lot of projects in the oven, and hadn't really taken the time to address them on here. And a lot of people see most of my stuff through YouTube, so everybody who's interested in what I'm working on, that's kind of what I'm working on right now. I have been working on SA1. So, the SA1 mod cartridge, or the SA1 patched games that have the speed, boost and everything with the, by adapting them to the SA1 cartridges. Been working on that. There is an issue that has been found where, like, the Gradius 3 SA1 hack will not work on certain SA1 chips, and it will work on others. And we're trying to figure out why that is. So I've been working with the developer, Vitor Villela, I think is his name. I'm probably butchered the pronunciation, but I've been working with him, and I've been working with a couple other people who contributed to the SA1 project as well. And we don't have any results yet as far as like making any compatibility improvements, but we are. I've been going through and I've been taking SA1 chips from other SA1 cartridges and soldering them on to my test cartridge. So here's a couple of loose SA1 chips that I've been removing from other cartridges and transplanting onto this cartridge so that I can test different date codes of SA1 chip using the various different ROMs that we're using as tests, and a couple of control ROMs that are just stock SA1 games that we know work. And we've been getting some interesting results. Compatibility varies depending on what version of the SA1 hack the ROM was based on. And it's just kind of an interesting project. I don't really have anything to report yet, but I'm really hoping that the testing work that I'm doing here is going to lead to a patch that makes the SA1 hacks more compatible with SA1 hardware. Because what I really want is I want to make it to where that we can use PGA European Tour cartridges to make SA1 hack games, because pretty much all the other SA1 cartridges that would be able to support the RAM natively without running any new wires on the board are games that I feel like probably we shouldn't be harvesting and using as donors. So if we can get compatibility to where that we can actually use a wide variety of different cartridges, and we can use SA1 chips from cartridges made in certain date ranges that currently don't work, then maybe we can use PGA European Tour cartridges for all of these hacks, and nobody's going to miss those. I don't think anybody's going to miss PGA European Tour cartridges. I certainly won't. So I would feel a lot better about this whole project as far as the real hardware conversions, if we can get that to where that we can just use PGA Tour cartridges and call it a day. Some people are trying to use PGA Tour 96 cartridges. It's not really practical because PGA Tour 96 uses a different cartridge PCB that doesn't have the wiring or the pads needed for the larger memory that you need to install for the SA1 hacks. So because of that, PGA Tour 96 really isn't a good option. But European Tour is the perfect board revision, but I can't get it working on any of the SA1s produced during that time period. So hopefully we have something new on that soon, but I really don't know. I have nothing to do with the development of that project. I'm just a tester. I brought this issue up and talked to Voltar about it, and he kind of helped me get in contact with Vitor. And I'm just a tester. So as soon as they have a new ROM to throw at me to test, I will test, and hopefully we get some results soon. But with that, I think I've pretty much covered everything I can possibly think of right now to show off out of the stuff that I'm willing to show off at this point. As soon as I get the Wii HDMI flex cables, I'm going to make a big announcement on that. Hopefully, probably do another video, which will be like an official install video for the Wii HDMI project, and then they'll be for sale at that point. Assuming we don't run into any other problems, and the flex cables come back and they're good, the Wii HDMI is going to be ready to go at that point. So, I'm really looking forward to that. But with that, I think that's all. Thanks for coming out. I see there's several people here watching, so I appreciate you all coming out to hang out with me. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.